Hi there, everyone. We want to welcome you to the Research Software Call 3 webinar. We're going to have two phases to the presentation today. The first phase is going to be presented to you by Scott Henwood. He's the director of our Research Software program. And he's going to run through his slides, and then we'll take all the questions at the end of his slides. Phase 2 will be presented to you by Patrick Dang, who's the program accounting manager. And he's going to go through all the finance slides. Once he's done, we'll then take all the questions that have to do with the finance slides. And at the end, if you come up with any further questions, we'll take them then as well. Just one quick note that we're hoping to have all the questions in the Q&A so that we can make sure we get all the questions answered for you. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Scott.
Okay, thanks, Laura. Just a quick history on the research software program at Canary. We've been funding researchers to hire software developers to build purpose-built software to support the research for over a decade now. Originally, we funded individual groups. They work alone. We got some great software to that. Some of it's still in use today. But we noticed something. We noticed that regardless of discipline, a lot of the projects we funded have a significant functionality in common. Is that better? I understand there's a little audio problem. Can you hear me better now? Great, thanks. Okay, next slide. So noticing that there was a lot of commonality, we've undertaken several initiatives to try and get researchers to share the software that we fund. And that brings us to where we are now, where instead of funding new research platforms from scratch, we're funding those who already have platforms to onboard new users so that they too can use the software in their research. So for those of you who've participated in our calls before, call 3 is similar to call 2A and 2B in that there's a development period, maintenance periods, and to qualify, you continue to onboard new users. We're interested in research platform sharing, period, ideally across multiple disciplines, but that's not required. And we also provide long-term maintenance funding, which is contingent on growing your user base. So it gives projects a chance to have some long-term stable funding to develop to the benefit of all users, including the platform contributors. Okay, some important times here. Proposals are due November 28th at 1 p.m. Eastern time. The system, I believe, automatically shuts down after that, so keep that time in mind. We'll be announcing the results on January 6th, right after Christmas. Our goal is to have agreements in place with the successful applicants by February 17th, and then that gives you up until April 1st to recruit your teams and start detailed discussions with your new users. As far as once you are at the April date, this call has 3 phases. There's a year-long development phase. And at the end of that phase, you should have onboarded at least 2 new research teams who should be using your platform for research at that time. Assuming you're successful there, that sort of enables a first maintenance phase, which is also a year. You know, you can sort of do whatever you want in that phase as long as your users are supported. So we would expect traditional maintenance activities, bug fixes, updates, and so on. But as long as your users are being supported, there's no reason you can't undertake new development to increase the utility of the platform. And at the end of the first maintenance period, if you've onboarded an additional 3 more new users for a total of 5, that unlocks maintenance phase 2, which is also a year and has sort of the same parameters as maintenance phase 1, and that you can do either support activities or new development or both. Okay, so these are just some common technical questions that we get from time to time. So you may have noticed that along with this call, Canary recently announced a RDM call, and there are some differences. RDM is more focused on interoperability between platforms that manage research data and metadata, ideally at a national level, whereas the research software call is focused more on adding new users to existing platforms, not necessarily at a national level. We're a little bit smaller in scope. So we've been asked, can I submit proposals to both calls? Yes, you can. Just note that the selection for the RDM call will be made first. And it's a fair bit of work because the calls are different enough that it's unlikely that the same proposal would be suitable for both. Can the funding be used to develop a new research platform from scratch? No, although that's certainly possible. The goal of this call is to onboard new research teams to existing software. Does the contributed platform have to have been originally funded by Canary? Nope, doesn't matter where it came from. Open source, other funders, us. Commercial products are also eligible, but they have to be made available to academic researchers at no cost for the duration of the call. So that generally doesn't fit in well with most companies' business models. Can the contributed platform already be reusable or have an established user base? That's actually a benefit if you have an established user base that is likely to show that the evaluators that you have a mechanism in place to support different users. Does the platform have to be reusable across different disciplines? That's the gold standard, but as we've gotten some experience with this kind of program, we've seen that there is a tremendous value in onboarding new users from the same or similar disciplines as well. Do I have to share my instance of a platform with the new research teams? No, you don't. We understand that if you have an existing platform and it's just your team using it, you might not have the user or group management in place required to isolate you from other users. So in that case, we're okay with spinning up another instance of the platform for different users. Our participants from our Canary Research Software calls 1, 2A, and 2B eligible for funding under this call? Yes, they are. There are a few restrictions for projects that are currently in 2A and 2B maintenance funding. But everybody is welcome to participate. Does the platform contributor need to have developed a platform to which they are proposing adding users? No, you don't. You certainly need to have the rights to use it, and you should have some expertise. So in the past, we've had groups who've modified existing open source packages that they had extensive experience with to onboard new users, and that's fine. If we have any researchers on the call who are interested in getting access to a platform but don't want to undertake software development efforts on their own, we do have a list of previously funded platforms who are interested in new collaborations at the link shown. And if you find something there you're interested in, by all means, contact us and we'll put you in touch with the PI. So I've talked a lot about onboarding new research teams. So what is that? So a new research team has to be involved in academic research, so not commercial research or product development. We use team. A team could be an individual researcher if they're doing research on their own, or it could be a group working on the same research. And both Canadian and international teams are eligible as new users. How will Canary know if at least 2 new research teams are using my platform at the beginning of maintenance phase 1? Simply, we ask. We require sort of letters in the proposal from any teams you're planning to onboard, sort of indicating your interest in the project. But at the end of the first year, we'll actually ask for letters of confirmation from the new research teams indicating that they have been onboarded and they are using the platform in the research. And we have a template for that as well. And so what happens if you don't have the 2 new research teams in place by the beginning of the phase 1, basically that delays the maintenance funding. I have status meetings with successful participants, as some of you may know, every 6 weeks. So if that's going to be a problem, give me a heads up, and we'll try and help sort that out as early as we can. Maintenance phase 2, it's the same thing. We'll ask for letters of confirmation from your new users, because we're now a year out. We'll also ask for a second letter from the teams that you had onboarded a year ago to confirm that they are still using the platform. And again, maintenance funding may be affected or withdrawn if we can't see evidence that there are the right number of new users. Do the new research teams have to be from my home institution? No, as I said earlier, any researcher or research team from Canada or internationally is eligible. The only limitation here is that all funded work and in-kind contribution has to be done in Canada. Can I onboard more new research teams in addition to those mentioned in my proposal? Absolutely. It won't affect your funding levels, but if you have more research teams, we'd love to hear about it. That's one of our metrics, and it helps us sort of understand the impact of our funding. My platform is already reusable by others. I don't need the full development phase to make it reusable. Is this a problem? It is not. Maintenance activities, sort of traditional maintenance activities, bug fixes, upgrades, security patches, and so on are allowed in the development phase. And on the flip side of that, can I enhance my platform during the maintenance phases? And again, yes, you can, assuming your users are happy. We are completely happy for you to work with your users, understand what new functionality might be needed, and implement it during the maintenance phases. If you have an idea of that, please describe it in your proposal. That'll sort of help the evaluators understand your long-term plan. And so at this point, you might be asking, what is the difference between the development phases and the maintenance phases? And really, they're checkpoints to make sure that the new users are onboarded and are using the platform in their research. You could onboard 5 users on day 1, for example, and do nothing but maintenance activities for the duration of funding. Okay, that's it for the technical session. Are there any questions?
We have one question, and it's, will the slides be circulated? We record this, and we will be putting the recording up online after it's done. Is there any other questions? We can answer some French questions as well, because we have Hervé here, and he will be able to answer any of your French questions. So feel free, either English or French. There is a question. Is there a requirement to use cloud resources?
The research software program supports use of Canadian digital infrastructure, cloud resources being one of those. You don't necessarily have to use cloud resources. You could use HPC, for example. What we really don't want to see is servers sitting under desks, and in fact, we won't fund hardware for that reason. So not necessarily cloud, but part of the Canadian digital research infrastructure, including the network, any sensor networks you might have access to, and cloud and HPC.
Okay, we have another question. Can a PI be co-PI as well as one of the 5 teams?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Typically, the PI would be the contributor of the platform already using it, and the other 5 would be new teams. The new teams could be led by someone who is a co-PI on the project. That's certainly acceptable.
Okay, and the other one is it possible to write the proposal in both French and English? Some sections in French, others in English. Yes, whatever is easiest for you is fine with us. Next question. Sustained future funding will depend on continued growing. Got the platform. Could you tell us more about what you are envisioning for this?
Think of sort of Canary as a seed funding. So we're funding you to get new users onto your platform, and long-term maintenance funding. I think our ultimate goal is that your platform will be seen as so valuable that it will become self-funding and therefore self-maintaining after this call, perhaps by your users, perhaps by your institution.
Can a participant be part of more than one proposal?
Hi, Denny. Sure. I think in that case, if you were doing the software development yourself, on multiple proposals, you would probably have to, or it would be in your best interest to put in some statements in your application indicating that you have the capacity to participate in more than one project at a time.
The need for research groups to have access to their own compute and storage in order to use the software platform was identified as a problem previously.
So there's a couple of solutions to that. One, they could use the instance that the platform contributor is hosting, and that does require to have some user and group management in place. Another option for those who qualify would be the Compute Canada Cloud, and we've seen a number of our projects have moved to the Compute Canada Cloud over the last couple of years.
What are the restrictions for Call 2A and 2B platforms in the maintenance phase?
Hi, Philippe. We can discuss this in detail, but basically the part of Call 3 up until Call 2A and B maintenance funding ends is actually funded under Call 2A and 2B, and then the Call 3 funding doesn't kick in until after the end of the maintenance period for the Call 2.
Apart from letters, what is the evidence of onboarding?
The letters are sufficient. We touch base about what's going on in the status meetings as well, but the community has been extremely diligent at letters, so I don't have a concern there. So they are sufficient.
Federal departments and federal employees are not eligible for funding. Are former federal employees eligible?
I would say so, as long as you're not working for a federal government department at the time.
The new research user group, does it have to be new to the platform or new to the features we propose to develop?
Hi, Gabor. That's one of those gray areas. I can't speak for the reviewers, but I would say that it's okay if they're new to the features, but they would have to be fairly significant and have a noticeable impact on their research.
Platforms that provide metadata and full text articles repository that can be used by researchers to develop their research can be considered as a researcher's platform?
Yes, they can. We've funded platforms like that in the past.
And I think we're seeing a little bit of replication between chat and question and answer. So I think there's only one outstanding from the chat, and it is sustained future funding will depend on continued growing of the platform. Could you tell us more about what you're envisioning for this? I think we actually did get that one already. Okay, so I think we're good. We're trying to get everything in the question and answer to make sure. So hopefully we don't miss anyone's question. If you don't feel it was answered, just put it into the Q&A and we'll make sure we get to it. Okay, I think we'll go over to the finance portion of the slides and I'll introduce you to Pat.
Hello, everybody. Just so you know, I'm joining here with my colleague, Tracy Murray. She is our Director of Finance, and she will assist me in answering any of the questions you may have at the end of the seminar. Okay, so I'll go over some commonly asked questions in terms of finance and some of our answers for them. So first one, is there anything I need to consider before completing the preliminary project budget? So as Scott has mentioned before, if you have received funding under our research call 2A or 2B, your call 3 development funding period will be adjusted to begin October 1st. Any activities between the period of April 1st to September 30th, 2020, that will be carried out using your funding from call 2A and 2B. If you are not funded under 2A or 2B, your funding period will begin for call 3 on April 1st. And one more thing, so all the project costs must align with the schedule of eligible costs. And how do I know whether or not a project cost is eligible? As mentioned, they must align with the schedule of eligible costs. We have a link to this at the bottom of this slide. So when we do circulate the slide, you can check out that schedule. But I can highlight the key categories in our eligible costs. They are direct labor, so this is your salary and your benefits. Direct materials, in this case, it would be for your software license fees. Subcontractors or consultants you may hire throughout this project, and training and travel. Are there any limits on eligible costs that I should be aware of? Yes, they are. We have them here in four sections. The employee fringe benefits cost must not exceed 20% of your eligible direct labor costs. The total of your subcontractor and consulting fees must not exceed 5% of your overall eligible project costs. The total cost of your direct materials must not exceed 5% of your total project costs. And your total cost of domestic travel must not exceed 3% of your eligible project costs. In our budget template, when you fill it out, it will warn you if you go over these percentages as well. Can I include the overhead associated with employees working on my project? No, so generally you cannot claim any overhead. This includes office supplies, the utilities, rent for the office space, office equipment, and so forth. Can I include sales taxes? Yes, you can include your sales taxes as part of your eligible expenses. However, only the non-recoverable portion of the sales tax is eligible. You can refer to, it's dependent on your organization and the province you're located in, but you can refer to the CRA, or your research accounting team will have that information for you. What qualifies as an in-kind contribution? So the in-kind contribution includes salary and benefits paid at the rate on your organization's payroll records. So if you do use a third-party payroll provider, you can show that as proof of that salary. And generally in kind, we would see it for whether it's a university faculty or your PI on the project. And anyone not paid a salary would not qualify as in-kind contribution. And this is just so that it's measurable. Is there a minimum in-kind contribution? Yes, the minimum would be at least 15% of the total eligible costs on a quarterly basis. Canary funding is claims-based. What does that mean to me? So our funding is done retroactively. So during the project, you will submit claims to us quarterly. And once we process and approve them, we will reimburse your institution for those eligible costs minus a 10% holdback. The holdback will be paid to you at the end of the project and after the financial audit has been completed and you met all the technical requirements. What supporting documentation is required before the first claim? So what we would ask from you before the first claim is to provide the payroll reports or record that supports the individual salary. This would include, it could be in the form of a salary letter. Again, if you have a third-party payroll provider, like ADP or Ceridian, we'll ask for those payroll reports from them. If it's done in-house, like in the university payroll, we'll ask for reports to support that. From a benefits point of view, again, if you have a third-party payroll benefits provider like Great Westlife or Sun Life, we would ask for a copy of that that ties directly to that employee's benefits. What supporting documentation is required with each claim? So each claim will ask for time records to show how many hours you have worked during that during the project, during the quarter. We ask for these time records to be approved and signed off by the PI or the project lead. And any supplier invoices or employee travel expenses greater than $1,000, we'll ask proof for that. Last questions. Will the project finances be audited? Yes, so 100% of the projects will be audited, and it could be scheduled at any time during the project. We will pay for the audit costs, and we will contract out to the auditor to provide this audit. We have reached the end here. If you have any questions, feel free to put it into the Q&A box.
Does anyone have any questions concerning either the finance slides or the program slides? We'll be taking either.
While we're waiting, Scott again, while we're waiting for questions, I'm just going to clarify my last answer to Gabor. The question was, the new research user group doesn't have to be new to the platform or new to the features we propose to develop. That would be a tough sell to the selection committee. I would suggest that that's probably not worth trying. You might be able to talk them into it with a really good story, but I sort of suspect not.
Okay, we have a question. It's in regards to the in-kind 15% minimum. What does quarterly signify?
Quarterly would be counted as the 3-month basis. So let's say you kick off on April 1st, 2020. So that quarter will be April, May, and June for those 3 months. So the in-kind contribution for that period of time must be at least 15% of the cost claim.
Okie dokie. Gabor seemed to have missed your answer, Scott. So if you could just repeat that.
Gabor, it was to your question about the new group being used to the platform, the new group being new to the platform or just to the features. I had a look at the evaluation criteria and I would recommend against trying to onboard an existing group. I think that would be a tough sell to the selection committee.
Thanks, Scott. Does anyone have any more questions? All right, well, we're going to close off this webinar, but I want to note that you can always think of more questions and email them to programs@canary.ca. Thank you very much.